and how are you doing today? I'm here with my May wrap-up video. I'm actually very proud of myself for how many books I read this month. I read 8 books, hard copy, I read 1 book on my Kindle, and I read 3 books on audiobook. I read 12 books in total. I've never really tracked my books before, but I overexceeded my expectations for myself, way overexceeded my expectations for myself with this month. I'm very happy with the amount that I read and the books that I read. I didn't read any books that I didn't like this month, so overall May was a really good reading month for me, and so I'm excited to share with you guys what I got the pleasure of sitting down and reading and what universes I was able to dive into. So with that being said, let's get started. I started the lovely month of May off with a classic from my collection, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I've never read Pride and Prejudice before. I never really had an interest in reading it until very recently. I remember sort of seeing snippets of the movie and just remembering I can't even tell what they're saying. Why would I want to read that or watch it? I was so silly back then, so silly. I ended up absolutely falling in love with this book within the first couple chapters. Right off the bat, what hooked me was Jane Austen's sense of humor, especially through Mr. Bennet. He was hilarious, Jane Austen was hilarious. What I also loved about these books were the characters. There was so much diversity to the personalities of these characters in these books. Lots of them were lovable, lots of them you love to hate. I thought the romance in this book between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy was oh, it was so good. It was like a slow burn. It was just a nice, slow, well-developed romance, and by the end it's like she had you on a wire dangling and just wanting it for so long, and then finally right at the end I was like a couple pages from the end, I was like, when is this gonna happen? I know it happens, when is it gonna happen? So I don't think all authors could pull that off, just being able to dangle you with a romance right up until the very end of the book, but Jane Austen pulled it off and I actually really loved it. Seeing the character development in Darcy and just sort of hating him on one moment and then loving him the next. Oh, it was just like a roller coaster of emotions. I adore this book. I want to read more Jane Austen classics because her writing was just phenomenal. I initially gave it a 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but I recently went back and gave it a 4 because after the initial I love this book because of the humor, it sort of went a little downhill for me, and I found myself wondering, is this whole book just going to be gossip? I was starting to get really wary of just having everything important in the plot based around or communicated through gossip. A little bit later it started picking back up for me once you really started delving into the character of Lizzie and her thoughts. But this book, so good. If you've never read Pride and Prejudice, please go read it right now. Just do it. It's so good. The next book that I read this month that I've never read before is A Permanent Member of the Family by Russell Banks. And this was my random pick for last month when I went to the bookstore and just picked a book at random, not knowing anything about it. It's a collection of short stories and I had no idea what to expect. The only thing that I really read in the cover was that it examines the myriad of ways that humans relate to each other. And so I think that was my first problem, going into the book too hung up on this one descriptive line. For the first few stories, I missed other points altogether. I was just too busy trying to figure out what is this trying to say about how we interact and blah, 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 blah. I just had to get my head out of that box that I was putting it in. Overall, I didn't really enjoy it. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 when it comes to entertainment value because I wasn't bored the whole time I was reading it, but I wasn't dying to pick it up. I was more so ready to move on with it, with my life. His writing though, Russell Banks' writing is very good. His ability to develop characters and scenes and plot in such a short amount of time is exceptional, but he is very bitter. And I think that's one big downside to this book for me, is that they were all so dark, and usually you guys know I love dark stuff, but I also like when you bring some light into it, shed some light on the situation. This world's not all bad, and it really seems like Russell Banks sees nothing but dark. He has a very dark view on marriage. There was a lot of bitter truth to these books, but they were also not even borderline pessimistic, they were just flat out pessimistic. And so for those reasons, I didn't love it. but it was still a worthy read. The next two books that I read, the original versions, Cinderella and the Glass Slipper by Charles Perrault, and Snow White by the Brothers Grimm. And these books are beautiful. They are illustrated by Camille Rose Garcia. Overall, I bought these books because of the absolutely breathtaking artwork. I literally like spent like an hour reading these books and just going through just admiring everything. The font, the layout, the art, everything about these books is absolutely beautiful. And I loved the stories. I loved the darker side of them. How can you even rate these? They're just amazing. The next couple books I'm going to talk about are rereads for me. I do like one reread for every 2 or 3 books that I have never read that I read. That was very confusing. I do one reread for every 2 or 3 new books that I've read. There. That was English. The first book that I reread this month is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling. You will be amazed to find out that I have never read Harry Potter until this past summer, 2014. The summer of 2014, I finally was taken into the Harry Potter world and I never want to leave. Nothing was ever spoiled for me either. I never saw the movies, I never read the books, I never like read any spoilers about it, nothing. So I was completely unspoiled to Harry Potter and it was amazing. Amazing. They are now my favorite book series for numerous reasons. I'm very happy because in the process of reading these books, I was able to inspire other people who I know who have only seen the movies and swear that they don't need to read the books. I've seen the movies. Please, if you have only watched the Harry Potter movies and you think you don't have to read the books, you are sadly mistaken. Go read the books. I promise you, please just go read the books. My friend, I asked him to be a guest on my booktube, like as a book reviewer, to come and like talk with me about a book, and he said, why don't we do The Order of the Phoenix? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, sure. I was caught in this awkward place where like I couldn't review it without rereading it, but it was also too soon to reread it and fully enjoy it. I don't know, it was just really weird. So the first like quarter of the book I was like really struggling, I wasn't motivated to pick it up, but guys, like the Harry Potter universe, I don't care how many times you've read it or how soon you've read it previously, it draws you in no matter what. And so I was very quickly reimbursed and reinterested. I could rant forever, but I'm really going to let it drop because me and my friend are going to get together and do a review on this right away, so I will rant to you then. So my next 2 rereads, I am making a goal to go through my Ted Dekker collection again. So the 2 books that I reread this month are Showdown and Cinder. And yeah, Showdown is about this town called Paradise. It's a really small town where nothing happens, and then one day this guy who claims he's a preacher, he strolls into town and starts doing a lot of messed up miracles. So the people in the town are like really confused because he's insisting he's like a prophet of God, but his style is more like a Vegas performer, and like the miracles he's doing are just like really like messed. And so it's like this town's very, very real and very heavy struggle between like a clash between the light and the dark. Saint is a book about the same characters in Showdown grown up. It's another clash between the light and the darkness, another like supernatural kind of book, but it's from a more grown-up perspective this time. Showdown is incredible. This is like everything I love in a book. It has dark and messed up symbolism. It has like a creative story. His views on the world and on like spirituality and the supernatural just like blow my mind. Like they're just so out of the box and so creative. One thing I will say about Ted Dekker that I'm finding is that if you have a certain perspective on God or Jesus or whatever, and you think that he's just this boring guy in the sky, Ted Dekker will break that opinion real fast. I want to know the God that Ted Dekker describes, the God that Ted Dekker knows, because he sounds very, very cool and very, very creative and like so not as boring as like a lot of churches make him out to be. Novels about spirituality really and the supernatural really intrigue me, and Ted Dekker really inspires me to believe like on a whole different playing field, and really causes me to take God out of the box that I always put him in. I think I gave Showdown 5 out of 5 stars because it's honestly one of my favorite Ted Dekker books. Cinder, on the other hand, and this is like with so much regret that I have to say, I really didn't like this book that much. It pains me. It really pains me to say that I don't really love a Ted Dekker book. I'm so sorry, but I didn't like it that much. I didn't find it boring. I wasn't unmotivated to pick it up and read it. The themes that Ted Dekker was going for in this book touched very heavily on tolerance and what it means to tolerate people who view life differently than you. So people of different races, people of different genders, people of different religions, what it means to get along with people but have differing opinions. And so there were a lot of very controversial topics in this book, and I applaud Ted Dekker for taking them head on. However, the rest of it was just like, I didn't find that the characters, they weren't flat, but I think the circumstances with the characters were a little weird for me. And I tried so hard to figure out a reason why it just wasn't sitting well with me, and I can't even tell you. Like, in the end, I was just left wanting more. And considering it's the third book to a trilogy that the first 2 books were really amazing. Like, the first book is Showdown and the second book is Saint. These 2 books are absolutely incredible. So considering that it's the ending, it's the climax to a trilogy that is like, the first 2 books were absolutely incredible, it was just disappointing. Like, I'm left wanting more, and not in a good way. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I didn't absolutely hate it, but I didn't love it like I usually do. Like, it wasn't to the normal Ted Dekker standards, and for that, 3 out of 5. Sorry, Ted. The next 2 books I'm going to show you, I haven't finished yet, but it is only the 30th of May. I still have tomorrow. I have the day off from both jobs tomorrow. They are going to be finished. That is a promise. The first book that I'm really enjoying right now is Cinder. These books are a mix between sci-fi and fairy tales. It's a retelling of Cinderella from a sci-fi perspective. So she is a cyborg, and she lives in the future in a city called New Beijing, and right now there is a plague killing a lot of people, and there's also aliens. So, I mean, what's not to love? I was so excited to get into this series. I didn't think I would get to them in the month of May, but I did. I did it. What a nice reward, because this book is absolutely, I'm loving it. I'm loving it right now, you guys. I've already recommended it to people, and I'm just over halfway through. I love the writing. I love the characters. I'm just drawn in by the plot. Everything about these books is just so good so far. I won't know what I'm going to rate this book until I'm done, obviously. It's either going to be a 4 or a 5 out of 5 stars, just purely entertainment-wise. It's going to be 5 out of 5 stars unless I have a feeling that I already guessed the twist. And that would be on page 199 that I guessed it. I don't really like being able to guess the big twist before the time given, because then like every time they allude to it through the rest of the book, you're just like, I'm pretty sure I already know what's gonna happen. So we'll see what happens. Either way, that's a really awesome rating, and I will recommend these books forever. They're so good. The last book I am not finished. This was also my Kindle read for the month, and I think I've been reading it for a couple months, to be honest. Like, I only read my Kindle when I'm out of the house, so it's taken me a while, and understandably so. It's A Feast for Crows by George R.R. Martin, the 4th book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, and I only have 100 pages left, which really excites me. And then the only book I have left in the series to read that's out right now is A Dance of Dragons. I actually had a lot of people tell me not even to bother reading this book. They're like, oh, you're reading a Game of Thrones? Oh, after you're done the 3rd one, just don't even bother with the next 2. Like, nothing even happens. Like, they're pointless. They're a waste of time. So I was like super nervous to read these books. I'm like, am I gonna be bored out of my mind the whole time, forcing myself to get through it? No, that isn't what it was like at all. I by no means think these books are pointless or boring or a waste of time. However, it's a lot of character development. Unless something really significant happens in the last 100 pages, not a lot of action. Not compared to his other books where there's like deaths every 5 sentences. It seems like there's a lot of transition time working in these books that wouldn't have, like, you can't just skip it. Like, I don't understand. Why would you ever skip a book in a series? Like, you're gonna be missing a whole lot of information, especially considering it's freaking A Song of Ice and Fire. But overall, I enjoyed this book, but I didn't enjoy it as much as, what is the last one called? A Storm of Swords. A Storm of Swords was my favorite in the series, and I think a lot of people would agree on me with me on that. Like, so much stuff happened. Like, it was just mind-blowing, the amount of things that happened in that book. And this book, it was slower. However, if you know me, you know that I love character development, and so I have no problem with that. Watching the characters just like grow, and their circumstances change, and their situations change, and yeah. So I by no means don't like this book. So I mean, unless my opinion changes in the end, I'll probably give it like a 3.5 to 4, because I didn't not like it either. Like, it's not boring to me. So this month I also listened to three books on my audiobook. The first one I listened to is called Not in the Heart by Chris Fabry. And guys, I wept my eyes out for some reason in this book, and I don't even know what it is that sparked me so many tears. Like, and it wasn't right up until the very end, and it was so sudden. It was one of those books where, like, I wasn't super into it the whole time. I wasn't not intrigued, but I wasn't like, oh my god, this book is to die for, this is my favorite book on the planet. But all of a sudden, at the very end, out of nowhere, it was like 1 second I was fine, and the next second I was like dying. My opinion of it drastically changed within the scope of 2 sentences. It's about a writer. His son is in the hospital with a very fatal heart condition, and he needs a heart transplant, and he will die very soon if he doesn't get that heart transplant. And then this guy in prison on death row, once they execute him, he wants his heart to go to this kid. This writer's kid. His only condition, though, is that this writer writes his story and publishes a book about this man in prison. So this writer is delving into knowing this guy in prison and like checking out his story. It reminded me a little bit of Serial, a little bit. What I will say about this book is that as much as I love the ending, and the ending boosted my view of the whole book, a lot of characters in this book were a little bit flat for me. The main character, his name is Truman Wiley. I loved his character. He was so funny, so sarcastic, and what I found most intriguing about Truman was his sarcastic view on Christianity. And for those of you who don't know, I am a Christian. However, I sort of like laughing at Christian cliches, like all the things us Christians do that are just like so silly and so cheesy. I like sarcastically laughing at that stuff, and this is what Truman Wiley was throughout the book. I loved his character. He was funny, he was well developed, he was a character you sort of love to hate, but then I just ended up more loving than hating him, to be honest. There were moments you just like wanted to strangle him, like, what are you doing? What is going on? Like, what is happening in your head? Like, what is going on in there? Even though Truman's character was really well developed for me, I found that everybody else wasn't really well developed. If I like a book, I am totally up for them being longer, just for the sake of extra character development, so that these characters that I'm trying to fall in love with will, like, to make it easier for me to fall in love with them. The guy in prison, I felt nothing for him. If you guys decide to read the book, you'll understand why you're supposed to feel something for this character, and I just felt nothing because there was no character development for him. I would have liked to see a little bit more character development on other like his character and other characters in the book, where I was supposed to be in love with them, but I didn't have enough to love them. I didn't know enough about them for them to be anything but one-dimensional for me. There's no excuse to have somebody that's so important in the story be so one-dimensional. Overall, I gave this book a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads because I did have some criticisms. There were some moments where I wasn't completely like enthralled in the story or the characters. However, it's like this book emotionally wrecked me. And so anytime a book emotionally wrecks me, that automatically, like, I feel like, here's a star for you, and you have a star. Speaking of emotionally wrecked, Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rowles. I have never in my life been so emotionally traumatized by a book as I was by this book that they make children in 6th grade read, and there's a movie to it, and I will never watch that movie, guys. It's a story about a kid who buys 2 hunting dogs, and like the whole story is about his relationship with his dogs, going hunting with them, all these good things that happen. And then like right in the first chapter, he tells you, like the first chapter is the kid as an old man looking back. He tells you it's a story about how his dogs sacrificed their life for him. Why did I download this book? Like I'm glad in the end that I did, because like I gave this book like 4 out of 5 for enjoyment, but 10 out of 10 for like literary construction. Like it was so good and so well written. The characters were so... I cannot even. I did a review on it very recently, in case you're interested. It's literally me crying because I came in straight from the car once I finished this book and did a review, and I'm like bawling my eyes out. But I loved it. It's like, oh. And the last book that I read in the month of May was The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks. And guys, this book was just a whole lot of meh. There was nothing. There was no depth to it. There was no depth to the characters. Again, I didn't hate the book. I was invested into it when I was listening. I was like, oh, that's sweet, whatever. But I wasn't in love. The characters did nothing for me. My main problem with this book is that it was just a whole lot of mush. There were no trials. There was no overcoming. Their relationship was just like sweet the whole way through. I knew it wanted me to believe that there was a possibility that she wasn't gonna leave her fiance, but please, there is no way. So when it came to the ending with the Alzheimer's and stuff, like I knew I was supposed to be sad. I think one of my biggest flaws as a book reader is reading a book and being able to read between the lines and know how I'm supposed to feel and know what the author is trying to say. And I really tend to overlook the fact that the author is not actually saying it. And so I've been more determined to actually look at the author's ability in writing these days, and this just wasn't there. Like I knew what I was supposed to feel. I knew that I was supposed to be heartbroken and sad, and Alzheimer's is honestly the worst thing ever, and I could not imagine a loved one going through it. That would be heartbreaking. But it didn't spark anything in me because the characters earlier didn't spark any sort of emotional connection in me before. So it was just meh for me. I think that was probably my least favorite read of the month if I had to pick one. 3 out of 5 for that one because I wasn't completely bored by it, but I wasn't like no emotion whatsoever. It was just okay, like I'm reading a nice book. So that is all the books that I've read in May. I'm so happy with the books that I've read. They were absolutely like, most of them were absolutely incredible. I went on a lot of new journeys this month with a lot of new characters, and I loved most of them. If you guys have read any of these books and want to talk to me about them, I love discussing books with you guys. Just comment below, give me a shout out on Twitter. I'll put all my information below. I just want to talk with you guys about them. Yeah, and I'm excited to start hearing what books you guys have read in the month of May. So May was a magnificent month. Awesome. So I love you guys very much. I hope you are having a wonderful day. See you.